Well, hi there, I'm Noah Bradley, and this is Handmade House TV. On this week's episode, we're going to continue our series on slate roofing, and as promised, this week we're going to tackle the tools that we will need in order to do the slate on our future handmade house, and as well as how to use them. So stay tuned. Well, all right, hopefully last week I got you all psyched up and excited and determined that you want to have slate on your future handmade home, and you're ready to do it. And where do you go? You've already got your slate now, you got your house up, and what do you do next? So many of the trades require so many tools in order to step forward and in order to tackle it. But slate roofing is actually one of those with the least amount of tools of any trade that I know of. You can actually get away with no tool whatsoever. You can more or less use the basic carpentry tools that you have. When it comes to working with slate, basically there are three different applications that one needs to do in working with slate. One is that a person needs to create a hole in each of the slates, two preferably, in order to hold the slate securely in place. Then next of all, we need to be able to shape our slate, to cut them. Sometimes we need narrower slates, sometimes we have a slate with a chipped corner on it. Sometimes we are working in valleys and such where we need to create angled cuts on our slate. Sometimes we're actually doing decorative features on our slate roofing where we'll want to cut little corners off of each of the slates in order to make them cute, in order to make them really attractive, to do something a little extra. So we need the ability in order to shape our slates. And then finally, we need to be able to handle mistakes. We need to be able to pull the nails out that we have used in installing our slate that never fails, that sometimes we over nail our slates a little bit, or we find that our slates are a little bit brittle, we didn't see it happening, or maybe we put a slate in the wrong place, or we decide that a different slate would like to look good in that particular spot, and so we need to pull the nails. Now, if you don't want to purchase any special tools and install on your slate, obviously you can pull those nails with a regular old claw hammer. You can poke those holes in the slate where you will drive your nails through in order to secure the slate to your roof. You can make those holes in a variety of ways. You can use basically a geology hammer or a hand pick in order to pop those little holes in. I've seen carpenters use a nail and a hammer in order to poke it in there. I've seen people pull out a drill and drill a hole through it. So there's a variety of hole tools that will help you with that regard. And then as far as shaping the stone in order to make them smaller or cut fancy angles on it, I have seen people use masonry trowels. I've seen them use hatchets. I've seen use claw hammers. I've seen a variety of techniques. I've seen garden snips come into play. Some people will bring in tile tools such as tile cutters or tile saws in order to cut it, or even grinding saws or skill saws with a masonry blade in order to cut it. But the technique that most slaters use, the most people that do slate for a living, it's a simple technique that they use, and it's amazing. But the same technique that worked out so well for hundreds of years is still by far the best tool that you can use today, and that is that you need to start with a slater's hammer and a slating anvil. Now, the slating hammer you can get on eBay. You can buy one new at Amazon or many different stores. All you gotta do is do a Google search for it, or if you want to find just a used one, if you're only going to do the slate on your house, if you're not going to become a professional slating installer, then a used one is just fine. And that's what I went ahead and bought for this particular one. I wanted to demonstrate to you guys the affordability of it, and I managed to buy this slating hammer for $25. And the handle on it was a little rough, so I wrapped some duct tape around it, and it's doing just fine for me. It works like a champ. And if you notice here on the end of the slating hammer, you will see that there's a little area where that I can use in order to pull the nails out, any errant nails, or anytime I need to remove a slate. Here I have the ability to remove nails. If you notice on the end here, I have a real sharp little point on it. And this is what I use in order to create the holes for where the nails go when I want to attach the slate to the roof. Now here's an old broken slate. Let me demonstrate to you exactly how you make a hole in a slate. Basically, that's it. See how it blows out the other side of it? There it is. A hole. There you go. See how it blows a crater out on the other side? Blows the crater out, holes in place there. But this tool does yet one more thing. Not only will it hammer in the nails and pull the nails out and make the holes for the slate, but also, if you notice down here on the shank of the hammer, it's more or less a cutting edge. And this is what we use in order to cut our slate, in order to cut a nice straight line down it, whether it's an angled cut or whether or not we're just reducing the width of our slates. So there's one other tool that I highly recommend you get in order to work with slate, and it's a little device called a Slater's Anvil. And I picked this one off of eBay just in the last few weeks, and it cost me all of $10. And this one is actually hand forged by a blacksmith. This is an extreme vintage one, and it was in great shape. And I was rather surprised at how affordable and how available these are. I guess a lot of people just aren't after Slater's anvils. It only weighs a couple of pounds, but it's a very lightweight piece of steel. And if you notice at the bottom here, there's a spike in it, and that spike is you can drive this anvil in wherever you are working. So if you're up on the roof, you can drive the anvil right there. If you're down on the ground where your slate pile is, you can drive it in a stump or an old board. It's a very portable tool. You just give it a couple of whacks and it goes securely into something, and then you're set to go. One thing to keep in mind with shaping slate, and that is that there is a minimal size that you can shape a slate down to. So you want to do your best when you're installing your slate roof to not have any inch-wide strips of slate, or be able to count on that. To create a slate that is only an inch wide and 12 inches long is pretty darn difficult to do. So much like when you're applying board and batten siding, it's a good idea to think things through when creating your slate, so you don't end up with any kind of slate size that you can't possibly recreate. See how we got a broken end on this one? And I'm just going to want to take that broken end off. Oops, upside down. Always cut from the back. One other tip that I can offer you when you're working with used slate, and you can see by cutting off of this angle here, off of it, I'm also cutting off one of the pre-drilled holes that's in there. And so it's not a bad idea to go ahead and create your secondary hole if you're working with slate, and make sure that you don't bust the entire slate up before you go to the trouble of doing all this shaping. It's a little bit stronger right now to create that hole. So let's see if I can create a hole in there now. Took a little bit more whacking than I wanted to, but anyway, I've got my second hole in there now, so ready for a nail to go in that. And now I'm going to shape it off. And notice that I have to use the pick end, that the hammer end is not designed for cutting unless you're left-handed on this particular hammer. And if I get a little extra like that, sometimes I'll nip it off. Now, of course, when you're cutting new and you got vintage, you'll have more of a weathered surface there and a more of a fresh, jagged surface on the edge. But it's amazing how fast that will blend down. So you've already got 2 holes in. If I find myself when I'm putting down slate up top on the roof and I need a smaller piece of slate, well, now I've got one cut out for myself. So let's do that again. Here I've got an old slate where both corners are a little bit nipped off. Now, to be honest, this slate would work just fine. It would never leak. It'd be just fine, but it just won't look quite as nice. Now, on a shed, I could probably go ahead and do this, particularly on the back side of it. Use this piece just like it is. No one will ever see it. No one will ever notice it. But sometimes you just want to do a really nice, refined job. So what I'm going to do in this particular situation is I'm going to take a little off of each side. And that's a little tricky right here on this part of the slate. You can see how thin it is right here where a chunk has chipped out. But this is on the top of the slate where the nails are going to be. And this is a part that will be covered over eventually. So even if it chips out, it's just fine. But perhaps you could consider starting your chipping there or not. So we'll see how it works out. Yeah, that worked out great so far. Whenever you're ordering your slate, you want to make sure and order enough so that you have plenty in case of breakage, and also for a little bit of a learning curve. So you definitely want to get some extras. But you can see how this tool works so fast, so easy. It is so enjoyable. Everyone that I've demonstrated this to and then handed the hammer and they've done it, they don't want to stop. It's that enjoyable of a process. And I can shape a slate with this faster than I can find an extension cord to plug in an electric saw. And it's a whole lot more pleasant to work with, and it gives a much prettier finished result as well. So definitely you want to pick yourself up a Slater's hammer. Now I'll probably talk about this in the next episode of putting slate roof on, but if you notice I did demonstrate to you copper nails. And the reason why you want to use copper nails, you can use stainless steel nails, but the first element you look for when you want nails into your roof is that you want your nails to last as long as the slate. And so you don't want to put anything up there that will rust or corrode. And that puts you down to basically just stainless steel nails or copper nails. Stainless steel are just fine. The problem with stainless steel is it's a very hard metal, whereas copper is a very soft metal. And copper will conform to the texture of the slate when it's driven down. It's a little softer and it's a little bit more gentle on the slate. And you have a choice in getting your nails. You can get ones with ribs on it, or you can get smooth shank ones. The ribs might hold a little bit better, but I've never seen a problem with having it, and the ribs are harder to drive in. So I generally go for the smooth shank copper copper roofing nails is actually what they're called. They got a pretty decent head on the top of them. Well, all right, I hope you enjoyed today's episode on all about the tools you need and the techniques in order to work your slate, in order to get ready to put them up onto your roof. On next week's episode, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start putting slate down on this tiny log cabin. I look forward to sharing with you all about that. Anyway, you guys take care. I look forward to talking to you then. We'll see you next week here on Handmade House TV. Bye now. So let me show you how to create a hole in a slate. Here we have one with a wet pocket on it. Sorry about that. Anyway, in order to create a hole, you basically just strike the back side of it. And then around the front, you can see where it blew out, and you got yourself a nice hole to put your nail in. Do that one more time. There you go. Don't do that.